accident and like lost part of her brain function, and she was known always as like the smart friend. Like that was her thing. Like every room she walked into, she felt totally confident and like really intellectual and really great. And so she got in this accident, and it was like this whole part of her identity was gone. That like smart girl, she didn't feel like that anymore. So her quote is "fake it till you become it." So first she tried to like fake it till you make it, right? And she didn't get very far with that. And then she started doing this research on power posing, and she started off just standing here in her power pose, kind of faking it, and then she actually started to become more confident. And now she does like all these great TED Talks and all these wonderful things because she faked it until she could really become the thing that she wanted to be. So that's just like a really inspiring story for me too. I power pose before like every interview. I did this morning when I woke up for this. I literally stand with my hands on my hips and I make myself smile for like 2 minutes straight, and I make sure no one else is around, but I really feel like it works.
I've done that. I was at an interview and I went into the bathroom and I just,
Yeah.
it's like part of the power pose is you take up as much space as you possibly can, and it worked.
It feels good.
All right, so now we've talked about body language. Again, it's just something to keep in the back of your mind when you're tabling, or just represent community development. Is what does my posture feel like right now, and how is that going to influence me? Marker. So I don't know if you can see on your page, this next slide here, we've got vocal techniques we want to talk about. And now that we've talked about the body, what does it really sound like when you're trying to talk to somebody about the Southeast China Sea, and why it's important and relevant right now? What does that sound like? So there's a couple things that I want to address. Try not to, don't move to the next page, just stand at this page.
Yes, sir.
Right. So we've got rate, volume, pitch, and pauses. Now, can anybody tell me why any one of these techniques is important when trying to deliver a message?
Or a good speaker you know that uses things.
Pausing. I know like some coaches do that, like when they're talking to their team, like, and then we're gonna do, and then like they do like a little pause, and then it's like they're gonna say, I feel like that grabs your attention. You want to know about something you have to say.
Right. And why, what does a pause do for the listener, do you think? Oh.
It just allows people to think about what the speaker's saying. Like personally, when I listen to people speak like in a group setting, I love when they like take pauses after they say whatever it is that
For me, if you don't speak loudly, then you're not like conscious of making
Makes sense. So that adds to pauses, and that adds confidence to it.
No, I mean like the volume.
Oh, volume, oh, I'm sorry. So a loudspeaker displays confidence.
Well, not loud, but
Sorry.
you know, I'm speaking at a tone where everyone can hear me now. So I clearly believe what I say, but if there,
Yeah.
I just feel like you're not really confident with what you're doing.
If you don't want to be heard, what does that mean about? We got volume, we got pauses. How could pitch help, and what is pitch?
You got it.
I don't know if it would be pitch, but
Okay.
I don't know about the person that confident, kind of on a strong voice. Not like mine right now, so more powerful.
Like I'm thinking like Adele. Like if I heard Adele sing, I'm like, yeah, she's a pretty confident woman. Am I like keeping up here? Yeah.
Now, do you think someone could speak at kind of a room level and still come off as a strong voice?
Yeah.
Like if I was up here and talked like this all day and said I was like really passionate about community development, it's not great, right? Like that's not
enthusiastic.
Yeah. Okay, what about rate? I feel like rate is hard.
In terms of rate, my understanding, I have seen really good things and they isn't being anxious or almost trying to cover up what one is saying, going on with what Allison said, almost not wanting to be heard, not very confident in the information you're delivering. So I'm speaking at, this being a slower rate and taking time to deliver the message.
I would say something at a rate where other people can kind of understand. Like, we have a lot to our department, but there's ways we can speak about like, the leadership development program without going, like, trying to fit all, like, the info about all 4 years into one 30-second pitch to the point where they're so distracted and it's hard for them to keep up.
I love everything you just said. That's basically our whole presentation. So do you want to come here and give it with us?
Which of those techniques with rate, which one do you think would help rate the most? If you're struggling with speed and talking at a consistent speed when you're giving a message, which one do you think would help you the most in bettering it? Which other technique?
Personally, for me, I feel like pauses, because I feel like sometimes you gotta give pauses and like kind of let them digest that what you're saying. Especially like when we do have like a bulletin board or we're doing handouts or we may have like an interactive activity. So just do those pauses to make sure that they're kind of on the same page and reading their facial expressions and body language to know that you're not just jabbering on about everything.
Also think with rate, it's also mindful for like the person delivering to have like a certain like rate of like how fast they're talking, because if you speed talk, then that's definitely either the person isn't like hearing all that you're saying, or like you're gonna run out of like breath and you're like having to, it just throws off like your whole presentation if you're like speed talking and then you gotta like, my bad, let me catch my breath and then like get
Sure.
everything. So like just be mindful of how fast you are talking and like pay attention to stuff like that.
Yeah, how many people have had experience where somebody's, just like that scenario, where somebody's talking so fast and you can see their face just going red, and you're like, this person isn't really talking to me. How many people have had that experience? Keep your hand raised if it's a professor. Yeah, right? There's professors on campus that they speed through their content, and that can be difficult to discern. And it's not that they're not, it's probably not that they're not mindful, but they don't recognize that it's a mindfulness in the speed at which they talk. That's an excellent connection. So what we want to do next is, now that we've kind of covered the different techniques we could use, we need a couple volunteers for our next activity.
Do it.
2, 3, 4. All right, you guys can come up here. All right, so what I want you to do is, anybody could take, you have the,
Yeah, you can, I'll pass mine around.
okay, sounds good. So what I want you to do is take this paragraph here and take a technique and either do it poorly or do it well. So either take something like pauses and read the statement and try to put in good pauses, or take this and take it, don't put any pauses in and make it sound really bad. And then we're going to try and discern what you were looking to do with that paragraph.
It could be any one of them.
Yep.
I could put, okay. The Leadership Development Program engages nearly 400 students, and 200 faculty, staff, and alumni annually. Based on results from the National Survey of Student Engagement and the Multi-Institutional City of Leadership, students who participate in the leadership program are shown to have significantly higher rates with high impact practices and other indicators of student engagement.
That was really good. That was really good.
So bad.
So what did we see?
And pitch a little.
Yeah.
Pitch.
Can really pause.
Did really pause?
Yeah, I put the pause at the last part, but
It wasn't like random
Yeah.
places.
What were you going for?
I was going for volume and the pause.
In the pause. Excellent. Nice job. Round of applause. Okay, so you can take one or two and either do it really well or try to do it poorly, and then just leave the
If you do all four, you get a gold star.
Yeah.
The Leadership Development Program engages nearly 400 students and 200 faculty, staff, and alumni annually. Based on results from the National Survey of Student Engagement and Multi-Institutional Study of Leadership, students who participate in the Leadership Development Program are shown to have significantly higher rates of experience with high impact practices and other indicators of student engagement.
What do we hear?
I feel like you were using pitch really well. I like you had a lot of modulation in your voice.
Mm-hmm.
Well served pitch.
And definitely, I felt passion when you were reading, like you cared about what you were reading.
Even though it's like the hardest paragraph that
I know.
Yeah.
Does anyone realize what they're reading? Anyone?
The mission statement.
It's what?
The mission statement.
No, it's a
Or
really,
use one.
so basically this is
Okay.
saying that, it's basically saying the leadership program is awesome.
Yeah, and we picked it because this is a conversation you guys are probably gonna actually have to have with people.
The Leadership Development Program engages nearly 400 students and 200 faculty, staff, and alumni annually. Based on results from the National Survey of Student Engagement and Multi-Institutional Study of Leadership, students who participate in the Leadership Development Program are shown to have significantly higher rates of experience with high impact practices and other indicators of student engagement. Yeah, okay.
What do we hear from that? Rate.
Maybe good pitch.
I think
Good pitch. Very volume.
What were you thinking?
I was thinking trying to like do really well with the rate and like trying to like keep a good pace so that it flowed and it sounded like I wasn't like reading off of something. I know that's hard, but
Yeah.
because I think I personally have my own like elevator pitch already like ingrained in my head for that, so but yeah, I think just like trying to get good rates so that you know what you're talking about and you don't make like this situation uncomfortable or have like a really like long pause where you seem like actually and then like read off statistics, so.
I
Yeah,
thought your pauses were good too.
Oh, thank you.
yeah.
Excellent. Round of applause.
Thank you.
Hey, did you go yet? Oh, sorry.
You did not go.
Stop lying. That's all.
Why did you volunteer if you didn't want to read it?
I actually.
But they all do, they did everything. Yeah, they can do it.
Do one really fast, Jackson.
Yeah.
Try to do one really bad, like either do really bad
Do
volume.
it super
Tank
bad.
it.
Really
I want to see
tank
you
it.
terrible.
Okay.
This is the most
This is for
encouraging advice
education.
I've ever given.
The Leadership Development Program engages nearly 400 students and 200 faculty, staff, and alumni annually. Based on the results from the National Survey of Student Engagement and the Multi-Institutional Study of Leadership, students who participate in the Leadership Development Program are shown to have significantly high impact practices and other indicators of student engagement.
Woo!
That's terrible!
Alright, what did we see poorly there?
Very fast.
Very fast,
You
too
did a
fast.
great job with doing
And no pauses, didn't pause at all.
The other thing that, oh, go ahead, Ellen.
I just wanted to say that I could have done rate if I was nervous. That's how I read. I read
Yeah.
just like that Sarah when I'm nervous. So, but I'm not nervous now, so it wouldn't come out.
Good.
I feel like one of the things that we didn't mention up there is also, like when Jackson was doing that so quickly, some of it, like the words slurred together, so like even speaking with clarity and having distinct words, and making sure that, diction, yeah, there you go. I knew there was a word for it.
Yeah. That's awesome. So,
What? Why are you laughing at me?
so if you guys want to take a note just under that slide and pick one that you think is one like you're either great at and you really want to focus on, or you're really terrible at it and by the way, and you want to improve on that one, right? Because we're going to give you a lot of information. Like I said, you may not remember every piece of it 9 months from now, but if you say to yourself, you know, I talk crazy fast, like I'm probably going to do the rest of this presentation, then that's the one you keep in the back of your head. And this is stuff that you can use outside of being a community ambassador, which is important. So take a minute to do that. Okay, so has anyone ever heard of deep acting? Great, Sean's gonna take over that.
So now we've talked about voice, we've talked about body language. We kind of want to get back to our motivation and thinking about, why am I tabling? Why am I part of community development? And the easiest way to do that is to look at deep acting. Is anybody, let me just ask that question. Nobody's familiar with deep acting, sorry. So deep acting, essentially what we're looking at is just trying to put yourself in a positive mindset. What's the easiest way to try to be more positive? Any suggestions?
Something I do is like, so instead of saying, I want to be this, say, I am this.
I am this. Excellent.
What do you say to that? What do you say you want? What do you tell us? You wake up in the morning like,
Well, like, I am a business owner versus I want to be a business owner.
That sounds
things like that.
Any other thoughts?
I tend to be a catastrophizer, so like when I start thinking something like, oh, this could go this way, like I tend to think like the worst possible scenarios. So like when I start doing that, I'll just remind myself that like this isn't true, like this is the way I am.
Right. Any other thoughts on being positive?
Not assuming other people's reactions will be inherently quote unquote bad or negative towards something you have to say or do. So going off what she said, not automatically like thinking that the worst is going to happen, but
Sure.
specifically with other people's actions or reactions.
Absolutely. And those all fit right in with deep acting, because what you're trying to do with deep acting is just simply take what scenario, maybe you came back from a class that was just really boring and you're kind of in a mood and it's like, I really don't want to do tabling right now, is trying to just take one little thing to focus on. So with deep acting, a lot of what's suggested is positive memories. Think of a positive memory. Think of a positive time that you were tabling and it went really well and you had a really good conversation. Or maybe there's a topic that is going to be in your next class that you're really excited to discuss. Could be that. What other ways do you think, what other positive memories could you think about during tabling that you think would be relevant to tabling? That's good. Any thoughts there?
Just thinking about like a time when you were happy or like very confident in your own abilities.
yeah, like a time you were successful.
Time of successful. And that's the other part of deep acting is just reframing the scenario. Trying to, I think we both spoke to that there, is reframing where you're at right now, as opposed to saying, I could be a business person, say, I am a business person. Reframing it and restructuring it in your head so it sounds, so that the language is positive, so that maybe you can become positive as well at the same time. Derek?
I think also, in regards to tabling about ComDev and the different, programs that we offer, just, if possible, also thinking about a positive time you have within whatever program you're talking about. So if it's the LDP program, you know, a great conversation, or just like memory you have from that, or community service, or democratic engagement experience. So just thinking about like, I had a really dope time at this, so like, let me kind of use that as this experience, for this experience.
Right, the experience that you've already had, that you already see where it's working, right? You already see where community development is already having a good influence on it. And that's where deep acting works so well with motivation, is thinking about how am I making a difference? How am I already involved? What good experiences have I already had that have already worked and helped people? Keeping that in mind is deep acting. Oh, go ahead.
Just like Daryl said, whenever I table, I never like talk about, when I table for the office, especially for the leadership development program, I never talk about it, what it is. I always talk about how my freshman year I had no job experience, blah, 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 and I feel like a lot of people can relate to that. So that's how I get people to do it. I never like go off the cliches, this, that, more with my experience.
Which is actually a really great transition to our next point, Sean, so I'm just gonna go for it. So, and I told you guys that Dave loves math, so if you look down, it's a very intense math problem. So what Sean and I figured out in our extensive research last 2 months was that effective messaging equals passion plus prioritization. And I love that you guys are saying so much of that already, that like, yeah, we want all the facts and all the numbers and how amazing every program in community development is, but we have to show our passion for that, because it's not super interesting to listen to someone just talk about facts after facts after facts, like a couple of professors, I'm sure we all have that. I won't.
But never Joe Chesborough.
No, not
Never
Joe
ever
Chesborough.
Joe Chesborough.
Joe's so passionate. So if you guys look at the slide that says messaging, so those are all terms that I pulled from like the community development website, the mission statement, like all those sorts of things. And what I'm trying to highlight here is that you guys have goals here, right? There's like a lot of actions that you have to take, and how do we take those actions is through our messaging, right? So if you want to serve the community, well, you have to be a really engaging person. You have to send some really good messages to be able to serve your community. If you want to encourage peers to participate, well, how are you going to do that? You can't just walk around like, yeah, guys, it's really great, you should join. Nobody's going to join, whatever you're talking about. And we want to think back to all of these things that we're motivated by. If we want to bring those to life, this is how we're going to do it. But, like I said, Dave loves math. So the first part of that is passion. Does everyone see that picture of that guy in the book, Humans of New York? How many of you guys are familiar with that? Awesome. So his name is Brandon Stanton, and the reason I picked him, he's actually, like, I think America or the world, I forget, but it's like top 30 people under 30 changing the world. Does anyone know his backstory on how he got started? So he is from Chicago, and just like any of us, has a phone with a camera, all wishing that we were Instagram famous, like I do every day. And he decided to go to New York City, and he wants to make a catalog of 10,000 people. So he goes to New York City, and he's like, I'm going to take 10,000 pictures. I don't think he really thought he was going to get famous. I think he was just going out and doing something that he loved, and that's why people wrote about him. And that's why he was so successful. Because anyone can go out and take a picture of anyone, but you have to really believe what you're sending out to people to have that kind of like persuasion and that kind of effect on people. So I'm going to read you guys one of the captions of his pictures. So if you guys follow him, his captions are like the story that somebody told. So this one was voted like top 10 in his book. So, I see myself in my son. I know what it's like to be in that teenage stage when you feel the need to prove yourself. One day when I was about his age, I was hanging out with some friends after school, and they wanted to go to the mall. But I had to go back to school and work on a project. A few hours later, they all ended up getting arrested for shoplifting. When I got home, my father was crying. He'd gotten a call from one of the boys' fathers, who told him everything that happened. He told my dad, Barack didn't get arrested because he went to school. My dad dropped to his knees and started hugging me and telling me that I made the smart decision. And that night he took me out to dinner. Today, every one of those friends is either dead or locked up. Mm-hmm. What are some like gut reactions we have to that story?
I
Yeah.
feel like, that could have easily been him. He could have easily decided that I'm just gonna go with them and do my work later or something. It was just a small decision that turned out to be so big.
He was honest about the situation and honest about pretty much like kind of implying that like the people he hung out with before like really probably weren't the best people and like continued to do so, and he, like Allison just said, he could have easily gone and like kind of fallen into that.
So as community ambassadors, you guys can see this is a pretty topical issue. So something I noticed about this was Brandon Stanton says it when you read about him and his past. He is a white middle-class guy from Chicago, and he is going around and getting people to tell stories like this. Stories that he can't relate to whatsoever. He was fortunate enough to have his family help him move to New York City, and he got to do this great thing with their financial support and their love and support. And he's talking to tons of people who have had completely different childhoods and completely different experiences. And I think that's something that you guys are going to do too. You know, you're going to be tabling about things that maybe you can't totally relate to, you know. When he first hears a story, he probably isn't like, yeah, the same thing happened to me, the same thing happened to my friend, because I don't think it did. So even if we're thinking about something like Brexit, right? I don't know if you guys are going to table about Brexit, but like to talk to someone about that when it doesn't affect you, or think about the border wall, right? Like we're all the way in New York. If you were down south, maybe it feels a little more immediate, but that kind of stuff doesn't necessarily affect you unless it affects your family or you sought that out. So that's something to keep in mind, is that passion can really close a lot of gaps between us. Are there any topics you guys think, like, I don't know what you covered this morning, but are there topics you think you would be a little bit uncomfortable talking about at first because you might not necessarily relate to them? Yeah.
So, Allison and I right now are doing a table on maternal mortality rates, and it's a little difficult because neither of us have had children.
Yeah.
And we're also talking about like minority maternal mortality rates, and like I'm not a minority, so like having those conversations when we first sat down and started talking about it, it's like I don't have kids, like I don't really know, like most of my friends haven't had kids, most of the people that we'll be talking to don't really have kids, so like how can we relate and how can we get other people to relate?
So how have you been doing that?
Most people know somebody
Yeah.
that has had a child, or your own parents. So like,
yeah, okay, good point.
so we kind of like, so once we kind of found things that we could relate back to, like we might not be affected ourselves, but being able to relate to like important people that have been affected or that could have been affected, like made it a lot easier.
Yeah. Do you feel like you had to be like really sensitive about it, especially because it like didn't immediately affect you?
Kind of.
Yeah. Are there any other examples? Any other topics that were difficult for us to talk about?
It is.
You go first. So, what Erica said, but like,
That's okay.
Yeah, I was going to say there's not a specific topic per se, but usually if I haven't directly experienced something, I don't feel as though I'm competent to discuss it. So either doing research beforehand or just essentially taking it personally isn't the immediate phrase that I would go towards. But I think Angie Thomas mentioned this in if you went to her keynotes speaker event at the beginning of fall semester. She said taking something personally, like one of these topics, even if it doesn't apply to you per se as a minority, or if you're affected by something, can help you communicate it more effectively and make you more passionate about it.
Yeah, that's an awesome point. And I think it sort of speaks to like the goal of developing the community, of community development. It's like we're trying to bridge all these gaps. We're trying to have conversations about all these really important things, but you can't possibly relate to every single one of those. You're gonna say something?
yeah, I was saying that like for me, it wasn't that I related it to people. I did relate it to Serena Williams because I like her a lot.
Yeah.
But it was just the simple thought of like, we're all human and you don't know when someone else in your family's gonna have kids and, you know, they're gonna go through the same situation. So it was just really the human aspect of it happened to someone you know or something.
Yeah. So what I want you guys to do is under the next slide, it says activity time. I want you to write a little bit about your Humans of New York story. So what would you talk about why you joined community development? What was your passion? What was your motivation? What were you hoping to get out of it? So just write a little bit about that. I'll give you guys a couple minutes. Is anyone going to share their pony story with me?
So I said, I joined for resume purposes, but I ended up loving it for other reasons other than my resume. I feel like it's taking me beyond my resume.
That's awesome.
Good.
I joined after volunteering in Texas. Well, I knew I wanted to join after volunteering in Texas because the experience I had was something I wanted to help other students realize.
Excellent. So you did something similar in Texas, or?
I did a volunteer trip in Texas.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, okay. Cool. Very cool. So you wanted to bring that in?
Yeah.
I joined to develop my leadership skills. For my career, I wanted to be community-based, kind of. So I wanted to learn how to deal with other people and approach them and help like fix and solve problems.
That's awesome. And I'm going to say this because we're on camera. You should just be a communications major.
I was mainly motivated to be like more active on campus and also like I wanted an excuse to leave my room. I was always in my room.
It's a pretty good reason.
After graduating high school, I thought I was like capable in theory in a professional sense, but I had very little to no work experience. And I'm